Welcome to the AmericanaMusic.com podcast with your host, Sarah Popejoy.
Today at AmericanaMusic.com, we have special guest McKinley James. He's a songwriter, guitarist, blues meets rock. That sound is kind of a blend. The Temptations, the Steve Pryor Band, sprinkled in with a little bit of Buddy Holly. It's a fresh sound that's all his own. But welcome, McKinley.
Hey, well, thank you for having me.
McKinley, tell me a little bit about where you grew up.
I grew up in a small town just outside of Rochester, New York. So if you're looking at like New York State, Western New York, it's about 6 hours from New York City, actually. Right next to, so if you know where Buffalo is, it's about an hour north. It's right on Lake Ontario. And we lived in a small town right outside of Rochester called Webster, New York. We moved to Nashville about 8 years ago, like last week, like September 27th marked like the 8th year we've been in Nashville. And I grew up in a super musical household. My mom was always in music. My dad's always been a touring musician and into music. But I knew super early on, this is what I want to do. I never really questioned it. I've just always, through the years, figured out how I could do it. And it kind of didn't matter how I was able to do it. It's just no matter what it takes, basically. And here we are.
Cool. What was it like growing up in Webster, New York?
You're only about 15 minutes from the city. It's just super. It's a very laid back town. And it's one of those towns where you go there and it's a farming town, basically. There's like a town square and everything. We lived in the village, but like you go 5 minutes from the village and it's all dairy farms. You can kind of get every, thing out of life that you want. And then we get all 4 seasons pretty heavily. We get like a beautiful summer and fall and a heavy winter too. So it's like, it was a really cool place to grow up. I had a good amount of friends and it's just a very small townish kind of thing where everybody kind of knows everybody. You go to the grocery store and it's like, oh, hey, you see your neighbor or something like that. So it's a lot of fun to grow up in a town like that. And then and then to move to Nashville, it's kind of like, whoa, it's just like, I liked it,
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Familiar with that area of New York. I went there a lot to play. I don't know why, but
oh, really? There was always a great music scene up there.
I always loved Rochester and Buffalo, and even went up to Watertown once.
Oh, right. Cool.
Yeah. Tell me what McKinley James's playlist looks like. In other words, what kind of music? Who are your influences?
So if you were like a playlist now would be all over the map. I listen to everything. But like if we were talking about like this is what I really dig. I really love like West Side Chicago stuff, Magic Sam, or Rush. I love Texas blues too. You got Brady King, Albert King. Not Albert King, sorry. Albert Collins. I kind of grew up on Booker T and the MGs because I first started off playing Hammond before guitar. So I was always into like soul music. So you got Booker T and all the stacks and Temptations, like you mentioned, all the Motown stuff. And I think I've always kind of had a nice melting pot, but I definitely say like Magic Sam, Little Milton, Otis Rush, Otis Redding, like a lot of the core Memphis, Southern soul and Northern soul people. It's a lot, but definitely Chicago blues was a good start.
Very cool. Tell me a little bit about your dad, Jason Smay. What was his influence? And it sounds like your mom was an influence too, growing up as a musician. What was that experience like?
It was a lot of fun because, there'd be always music playing at the house, whether it's records or even like, I remember you'd go in the living room and my dad would be watching like a music documentary or like, because there's one on like Motown, you see that, or there's like live performances. And the video that really kind of got me into music, playing guitar, walked into the living room and there's this, I think it was VHS, but it could have been DVD at the time. Stax artists doing One Night in Norway. And it's just like all the Stax artists doing like 2-3 of their hits and Booker T and the MGs as their backing band. Just that one video alone was like, okay, that's what I want to do. It's a very fun environment growing up, with a super musical family and stuff. My dad, would be on the road and he'd come back. And sometimes when he was in a band that would come through town or even like friends of his would be in town playing in Rochester, they'd stay at the house. So like, you're going to get ready for school and there'd be like, 3 band guys at the kitchen table. So it's just like, no matter where you went, it was always, music around me.
Yeah.
And he's always been a part of really cool bands and stuff. So it's just like from day one, just kind of diving headfirst into the deep end.
That's so cool. How neat. Well, have you been to the Stax Museum in Memphis yet?
I've never been. I'm way overdue for going. It's not too far. I think Memphis is only like 3 hours, so I definitely should go there soon. I've always wanted to go.
Yeah, it's not far from Nashville at all.
Have you been?
And that is the one thing I cannot believe I did not do. It was like, I actually lived in Memphis for a little bit, for about 3 years, and spent some time on Beale Street. Oh my gosh, I freaking love Beale Street.
Sure.
Well, it's a little dangerous. When I say dangerous, I mean like alcohol wise, because there's people on this street selling you drinks, which was a little weird for me
Sure.
growing up in Oklahoma. But like Beale Street itself, there's just music everywhere down that street. And I don't know if you've had a chance to go yet or not.
I've been meaning to go. I've got a bunch of friends that play down there, and they're like, man, it's great. But I've just never. Only times I've spent times in Memphis. We've played a couple times in Memphis, but I've never had enough time to kind of explore.
I think it's still there. BB King's the first one that was obviously in Memphis, because that's where he's from.
Sure.
It's a very, very cool room. Like, there's not a bad seat in the house, so definitely recommend it. There's some amazing. When I went, it's been a little while ago, but I'm sure it's pretty similar to the same. You know, they had some amazing horn players there. You know, they have a house band. It's worth going. When did you start playing guitar?
I was about 10 or 11 years. I'm about 11 years old, and it was from that video I talked about a little bit earlier, where I've always been a big Booker T and the MGs fan, still am, but I always paid attention to just Booker T because I was playing Hammond, or learning to play Hammond. I didn't get very far. And I never pictured, you know, you hear guitar and everything, and I've seen a bunch of guitar players, but just watching Steve Cropper in that video is kind of like, okay, that's what I want to do right there. And since then, like it just kind of tree branched into, you know, learning about so many other people. But right about, I was like 10 or 11 years old seeing that, and it's like, okay, this is what I want to do.
That's so cool. You talk a little bit about how your dad pushed you to sing.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. When I was first starting to learn guitar, I didn't even think about it. Like, it wasn't even like, I never had the thought of, I want to sing songs and stuff. I never thought about it. Like, I'm going to, you know, want to learn how to play guitar. It's like, okay, well then you got to learn how to sing. And at first I was like, why? But he was like, well, you'll always get, you know, a lot more opportunity if you learn how to sing. Even if you know, sing a little bit, you can at least be a guitar player that knows how to do harmonies. So, you know, you'll always have kind of like that, a little leg up of opportunity, because especially if you move to a town of guitar players like Nashville, there's so many killer guitar players that are better than you everywhere you look. So it's like, well, if you can sing, it's like, oh, well, I can do a gig with you because you may not sing, but you are a killer guitar player, and I can play guitar and I can sing, so we can do gigs. It's just, you kind of tree branches from there, and then you learn on songwriting and stuff. So I slowly was like, okay, yeah, I'll learn how to do it. Once I kind of got over that hump of like, oh, okay, I can do it. I can see some results. This is fun. I fell in love with it because it was like, okay, I can do this. This is fun. And it's another way of expressing yourself that I never would have thought to do. You know, it's just like, I just want to play guitar. But now, like, sing, you know, songwriting and stuff like that, it's just like, whoa, it's opened up a bunch of opportunities. And if he'd never, you know, encouraged me and pushed me to do it, I wouldn't be here today. That's for sure. The record we just put out and the record we put out in the past wouldn't have happened.
Did you take vocal lessons?
I learned bass player in one of the bands my dad was playing in at the time in Rochester called the High Risers. I learned a few techniques from the bass player, Todd. Warm-up techniques, just to kind of so you don't throw out your voice and stuff like that. And he showed me a couple ways of kind of singing a little more fluently and stuff. Mainly just listening to a lot of records and kind of hearing, you know, because I listened to that for the guitar playing and everything. But when I started listening to it for the vocals, you kind of realize, oh, okay, that's kind of how they're doing it. And you kind of sing along and figure it out. But then when we moved to Nashville, I remember we were touring, you know, a good hand and stuff and doing gigs. And it was fine. When we went to Europe for the first time in 2019, it was like October of 2019, we were going to be gone for a month, and we only had about 4 days off. So we're playing almost every night. And I'd never done that before, you know, just like a bunch. We'd done, you know, little tours where it's like a week or something and you play a lot. But, you know, almost every night of the week for a month, I'd never done something like that. So it's kind of like, well, I don't want to get over there and then not have the endurance. Like, because then at that point, like, what do you do? And so I was like, well, I'll take some lessons for warm-ups and just kind of breathing exercises to where, you know, you can have that endurance, because you're doing about 90 minutes every night. And so after a while, you know, I learned some techniques and how to warm up and stuff. And then you get a little bit better at that. And we did that run. And I was like, okay, well, I can do that. And then I think I went back for a couple lessons after that. I've just always kind of been super conscious in how to maintain the endurance and just keep practicing. You always have to practice. It's like a muscle.
You've got a great blues voice.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, it's really cool. At what point did the songwriting kind of play into it? I mean, was it just kind of a natural transition?
I think it really kind of, because I'd written a couple songs before we moved to Nashville. But when we moved to Nashville, it was kind of like, okay, everyone else here is killer. Like, you really got to step up your game. It's kind of like, it's like immediately moving there and going to see live music. It was like, okay, I thought I was pretty good, but now you really got to like step up your game, because I mean, you're walking into a city where there's Vince Gill. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, and not like in a competition way or anything like that, but it just kind of shows you like, hey, okay, there's still a lot of hard work to go, and it's a fun challenge. But I'd say it definitely kind of, I worked harder at it as soon as we moved to to Nashville just because of that. It's like, wow, okay, I'm getting to watch pros. This is what they do. I want to do that. So how can I get there? And it's just, keep working at it.
I think you learned so much too.
And listening to records as well.
Yeah. And in that first year of just soaking it all in and seeing how people put together songs.
Totally.
You learn a lot in Nashville, just from almost osmosis.
Yeah, well, totally. And, there was a buddy of mine, or a distant friend of mine, was thinking about moving to Nashville. And he's like, well, is it worth it? Because he's like a guitar player. And I was like, man, as soon as you move here, you don't even have to hang out you don't have to be out at bars every night or anything, but just kind of being here, making friends and kind of soaking it up. Like you said, for the first year, it's just like you immediately start gaining more knowledge just being around so much great talent. Like, it's weird how it works, but it just happens. If you're really into it, like if you're really determined to do it, it just happens.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I already knew it was like that and it was happening, but it really hit me when I was living in Nashville and I can't even remember where I was. I was probably just walking down the street or something, and I saw a newspaper on the front were the CMA Awards. And so I was like, yeah, that would never happen in, say, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I mean, it'd be in the paper, but it would never be the front page. And so it's just so part of the ecosystem there that.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me about, now that you've, been here. I'm not in Nashville, but my soul is still there. Anyways, how do you approach a song when you're, getting ready? Do you just like let the spirit move you, or do you have a certain system, or
for writing songs or playing?
For writing songs,
it kind of comes in all ways. Like sometimes there's that app like on your phone that comes like when you get your iPhone. Even like I think every phone has it now. It's like the little voice notes you can keep. Sometimes I'll just be in the car or something like that, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's a cool thing." And you just kind of hum something. It'll only be 10, seconds long, and you just get a bank of those. And sometimes I'll go through and be like, "Hey, what was that thing I was thinking about earlier today?" And you go listen to it, and sometimes that sparks an idea, or like someone will say like something, and like they'll just say something off the cuff when you hear somebody talking. It's like, well, that's cool. Maybe like a topic they're talking about or something. You'll be like, that'd be fun to write about. And you kind of write that down, brainstorm. And sometimes, like I've been just on the verge of falling asleep, and it's like, wait a minute, it just kind of happens. But sometimes I start with just the music, but I like to start out with the lyrics. For some reason, it's a little bit easier for me if I start off with the lyrics, because I know like I can come up with a guitar part,
right?
But it just kind of getting the lyrics down is a little more important for me to start, to get me focused into writing.
Do you write the lyrics out first and then put the music to it, or do you do it at the same time, or it varies?
It varies. Like if I've got like a little, like maybe a verse or something like that, then I'll start to work on the music. It kind of slowly collides, and I've written some songs where it's just like lyrics only and then kind of figure out what I'm going to do, but it usually collides after I get a first couple lines or something.
That's cool. It's real cool. When you're talking about the almost falling asleep, it reminded me of a conversation that I had with this other songwriter, and we were talking about Thomas Edison. Okay, so this is how the story goes, and I may totally mess it up, okay, but this is how I remember
okay. I'm here with you.
So all those Thomas Edison bookworms out there, take it with a grain of salt, that he used to try to get inspired for ideas, would hold like this ball over this bowl and fall asleep. And when he dropped it, he was in that state of twilight, almost falling asleep, and that he could come up with some ideas that way. But I just always thought that was really, really cool.
I have to try that.
I've never actually done it, but when I used to live in Nashville, I worked doubles on weekends as a nurse. And so Mondays, I would be like wore out because I'd work 4 shifts in 2 days. Monday, I'd be just tired as heck, but they'd also be my most creative days.
Sure.
Because I was so tired, I felt like I couldn't get in my way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. It's like I even feel the same way a little bit about playing when you're super tired. I remember I'd played with a friend of mine's band. I was just subbing, and we were playing St. Louis, and I had to get back because I was working at a studio in Nashville. We played on a Sunday night, and Nashville's only about 4 hours away, so we get done with the gig about 11. I couldn't take that Monday off because I'd already taken off a bunch of times. It's like, okay, we got to drive. We get home at about 3, 4 in the morning. I got up for work about 6. Running on empty, starting the day. And then we played a gig that night in town. It was our Monday night gig. I remember showing up to that gig like barely awake. But I remember I'd played. It was one of my favorite nights in a long time at the time when I'd played, because I was just like not thinking about anything else. I had like no brain capacity to think about anything else or worry about it. It was just like, okay, I'm just trying to get to the gig and I'm going to play. And that was it. Like I didn't have anything like what I was going to do after the gig, what I was going to, do tomorrow, or I just had forgot everything. I was just like super tired and just focused on what I'm doing. And I played great. So there is probably something to being super tired and creative at the same time.
That's really cool. I love it. Your most recent album called Working Class Blues, your first studio album, is that correct?
It's our first full-length studio album.
Okay.
We had done about 3 EPs at the time, and we had one full-length live record, but this is like the first full-length studio LP.
You and your dad recorded the album in 3 days?
Yeah, it was Thanksgiving weekend. Some of the songs on the record to kind of work in all the quirks and figure out all like how we're going to get through the arrangement and everything live before we go in the studio. Because then when we went in the studio, it's just like, okay, we know what we're doing and everything, we worked out little intricate things. And in the past, we had like gone to the studio, recorded it, and then started playing it live. And then when you play it live, you come up with some cool little parts you didn't think of at the time. And you're like, we should go record it now because, it's a lot cooler now than it was, when we cut it. So we've been playing the songs on the record while we were touring months before. And then when we went, just like, okay, we know what we're doing. Let's get to where the mix is going to sound cool in the room. And it's just drums and guitar, vocals. And it's like, sweet. We just laid it down. About a week or two to kind of get it mixed, but all the tracks were done in 3 days.
That's pretty amazing. That is really hammering it out. I tell people 5 days and they're like freaking out. So 3 days is like warp speed. But you recorded it live though, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, and it's like, we wanted to do a record where it was like, okay, what you hear on the record is what you're going to see live. I mean, live's going to be a little more exciting because it's live. We could totally go off in the record land. And I've got friends that do it, and I've done it in the past where it's just like, it'd be great to have this on there and this on there. And then when you go see it live, it's only 3 guys, which is fine because the record will sound great. And, sometimes it's cooler live, stripped down and everything. But we just went like, okay, it's just 2 of us. Let's just, have it live. And then it's just raw emotion like the songs are. They're just nothing fancy. Like, here's the songs. This is the meaning of the song. And it's just 2 people bushing it out.
Yeah. I listened to the album before knowing that. And never even hit me that
Oh, wow.
it's 2 of you. So that says a lot,
Sure. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, sounded full and energetic, and I totally get that. I think you achieved the kind of live yet recorded sound that you were going for. So,
and especially the music we've always loved, the R&B stuff and blues stuff, and even like rock and roll stuff. It was all recorded like that back in the day. And even like there's people that did it in the 80s where it's just like, this is rock and roll. Let's get in the room and let's do it. That's really part of the element that I've kind of figured out to where it's like it helps it feel natural.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of records that I've worked on where it's just like we're doing a lot of overdubs and it still sounds killer. We felt like for this record, it was like, okay, to really capture the feeling and emotion from these songs, we've got to do it this way.
The studio that you recorded this album in as well was a home studio that you guys constructed in your family barn?
Yeah. Okay. It's above the garage. It's a big red barn. And it's all like, it's got like knotty pine wood and everything my dad built out and everything. And it's like a super comfortable like music room. And I set it up to where like, because I used to work in a recording studio in Nashville. That studio was very set up to where you go in there and it doesn't feel like a studio. You just go in there, you're super comfortable, but everything's already mic'd up. So like if you're like, hey, I got an idea, it's like, okay, press record and then you're ready to go. And that's kind of how I set up the studio upstairs where it's like it feels comfortable, doesn't feel like you're in a place where like, oh shoot, we're watching the clock because we're paying for time. It's just like, okay, we can get in here, we can work on ideas, and while we're working out these ideas, I can just have it recording at the same time, and it's not feeling like, okay, we're starting up for a session, today's the session day. It's like, okay, we're gonna go up there and play the songs that we've been working on, and it's gonna be recorded and we're gonna be super comfortable.
That's really cool. Well, I think that's why I was surprised that you did it in 3 days.
Where it was just like, okay, we don't like, we could just walk 30 feet, 50 feet, and it's like, okay, let's go play the songs.
Well, maybe because it was such a relaxed environment, it was easier to just,
Yeah, totally. And the clock that ran out of batteries, so it's like I didn't even watch the clock anyway. It was stuck at 5 o'clock.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. There's a song in there somewhere. Cool. So you said you had experience working working in a studio before, so that
Mhm.
probably helped quite a bit in the recording
Yeah, totally.
process.
Yeah, right out of high school, I started working for Dan Auerbach at Easy Eye Sound. I learned a lot. I worked there for about 5.5 years, and it really changed my whole perspective on studios and really that side of the music business, other than playing live, because you just kind of jump in. You got people like Dwayne Eddy coming in, or John Prine. I got to meet John Prine a couple times.
Cool.
Like just all these music, giants just coming in. It's like, okay, you kind of learn how to act with, all these great people and not be in their way, or just kind of be like, yeah, you need that? Sure, I'll help you out. Or, it's just kind of like, or even writing charts, learning Nashville notation. It opened the door for a lot of learning and what to do and what not to do.
That was in Nashville?
Yep.
How neat. I was going to mention this. I don't know that I'll keep this in the recording or not, but you should definitely check out Sun Studios too.
Yeah, it's another place I've never
When you go
been.
down there. I have been to Sun Studios. It's really cool. It's neat being in the exact same room that Elvis, and not even just Elvis, but like, Johnny Cash and, Roy Orbison have all been in, and to know that they recorded in that same room, and U2, and it's really cool.
Wolf.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's pretty badass. Or even like, the Little Milton cut stuff there, Charlie Rich. That's another room I definitely have to. I would go there just because, those guys cut there. But I'm sure there's a magic in that room.
Oh, there is. And I don't know if you still can, but you used to be able to record there at night.
Yeah, totally. When my dad was in JD McPherson, they did that little TV show that they'd interview the artist, and then you'd cut like one or two songs there and they'd video it. And it's just like, that's the sound right there. Like and with I think every band that's played there, it's like whatever genre that they play, it's just like, that's Sun Records right there.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could do that at Motown. That would be killer. That would be fun to do that.
See, I don't think they still have a studio, but I could be totally wrong about that. The only reason why that comes to mind is because here in Tulsa, they have church studios. I keep trying to put an S on the end of it. The church studio. It was Leon Russell's old studio. Anyways, she was talking about the different studios and which ones were still there, and I think she was talking about Motown, and I don't know if they still have a studio or if maybe they haven't kept it up. I don't know.
I think it's mainly just like a museum now.
Yeah, I think that's what she was basically saying. I know, but Fame Recording is still,
yeah.
a lot of those guys went there. But anyways, I'm getting off into a tangent again.
Oh, that's all good.
I love talking about studios. Oh my gosh, I love studios. McKinley, thank you so much for joining us today. And everybody, please go out and check out his website. It's McKinley James. Check out his music, listen to his new album. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, well, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Here's a short clip to next week's interview with Matt Joe Gap.
I'm from New Zealand originally. I lived there as a child. My mother was born there. My father's from England. We traveled a lot as a kid. I lived in Northern England and I lived in Syracuse, New York for a little bit, Canada. But New Zealand's probably where I spent most of my time as a child. I would say it was mainly in a place called Dunedin, which is the southeast coast of New Zealand. So that's right south of south. Bottom of the world, really. It's cold, as you can imagine, in the winter, and it's pretty cold in the summer, to be honest. But it's a beautiful town, and it's a sister city to Edinburgh in Scotland. So the street names are the same as Edinburgh, and a lot of the architecture is similar. Gothic architecture. Beautiful town on the hills. So you have some beautiful views there, and it's got a great music culture that was especially prolific in the 80s and 90s with a record label called Flying Nun.